Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, Ernest Alex Reads. Today I would like to suggest three fantasy series that I think everyone should read. The first trilogy basically that I want to talk to you about is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. This series is set in a world where there are natural catastrophes so horrible that the human race struggles to survive. There are also a set of humans that are able to control the earth and sometimes the weather, so they're able to stop earthquakes within reason and that kind of stuff. And this follows a woman as she tries to save her family, while her daughter, as well as trying to deal with a natural disaster, a fifth season, so a season full of acid rain and disaster that is set to last 1,000 years. It's a trilogy. I think it's one of the most interesting fantasy trilogies that I've ever read. I am considering rereading it. That's how much I really enjoyed it. I struggled with the first 50 pages, but if you do pick this up, just push through it because it's so interesting and so well written. There's a lot of good representation in this book all around, and the main character is a middle-aged woman, which I thought was refreshing to read, a story where it wasn't some 16 to 18-year-old person living on a farm that discovers that they have magical abilities. I would suggest this if you're looking for kind of a interesting and new take on fantasy. The next series I would like to suggest is the Seven Realms series by Cinda Chima. This is a quartet. The last one was published in 2012, so it's pretty easy to get your hands on this series and you don't have to wait for the final installment. This is set in a world where there are 7 realms, and it follows a street lord from the slums of the capital of one of the 7 realms and the crown princess of that world. The country where they live in is a queendom instead of a kingdom, and it follows these two characters as they discover new things about themselves and go on a very complicated and politically interesting journey within the 4 books. I recently finished this series. I'm really quite in love. I thought that the first installment was okay, very good for setup, but I wasn't so obsessed. I picked up the second book in the quartet and then ended up reading the last 3 books within a week and a half, and I thought the last 3 books were amazing, and I'm so sad that there's not another book, but I would suggest this to fantasy lovers who haven't read it yet. I don't think this comes as any surprise, but I would suggest the Six of Crows duology by Leigh Bardugo. This book makes it feel like you're part of a really strong friend group. This is a heist book set in a fantasy world. I also flew through these 2 books. I really think that they're one of the best new fantasy books that I've read this year. I love all the characters. I think it's a very emotional fantasy book. I kept turning the pages. There were so many plot developments and twists and everything. I was very glad that I had both books with me in my apartment so that I could just continue on with the duology. A good heist book, I would suggest this. Actually, I would suggest it to anybody. But yeah, please read it, it's awesome. So those were my 3 fantasy series that I think everybody should read. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and happy reading.